First, Pam, I want to thank you for the job you're doing as Lieutenant Governor. You and the governor are doing a great job with this. And I guess let's get into what I'm getting a lot of questions on is the reopening of South Carolina. Kind of as we phase it moving forward, when do you see a timeline, and what's your thoughts on fully reopening?
So what we're doing at Accelerate SC, which is just, it's amazing. I know the president and vice president has complimented the governor on this task force that he put together, is to get guidelines. We're getting guidelines from every industry that has been impacted with an executive order. So as you saw yesterday, big news, hair salons open, nail salons, gyms. We're taking those guidelines that are coming from business, which I'm very proud of, is that we have businesses telling us what will work well for them in this new environment that we have to be in. And then getting them reviewed and approved, and then getting them back out there. So as quick as people can get us guidelines on these close contact businesses, we are turning them around and getting them on the schedule to get them open. So the governor is saying he's not putting a defined timeline, because he's going to open it as quickly and as safely as he can, based on his input from the business community.
Yeah, you're a business person. I'm a businessman. It's important to stay in touch with them, because they're the heart and soul of the state, not only for South Carolina, but everywhere. So the conversation is great. Pamela, on under the CARES Act, the $2 billion that was distributed to go to the local governments, how is that going, and how do you think that will be distributed?
So that is the task of the resource committee, and they met yesterday. And so what we have done is we have explaining the guidelines to local government and saying these, the federal government came up with a narrow lane to stay in to be eligible for that COVID-19 money. So it's basically a reimbursement on whatever you have spent in regards to COVID-19 and whatever you're gonna spend through December 31st. And so we wanna make sure that they understand, because there's a clawback provision. The governor has used Senator Ryberg to sit at the table to make sure that we have very clear understandings and transparency of how that money is used. Because the state will be in the middle of a clawback if a locality uses that money inappropriately. We're gonna have to make sure that that's done properly. And yesterday we talked about using a third-party administrator to add to the transparency of how money is getting filtered, not just down to our localities, but to our business community.
That's great. Greg Ryberg is a great person to have on board with that. And I do think it's important to let the governor's office distribute that money and be the gatekeeper.
Well, yeah, we believe that that's very important too. And we also know that that's what our president wants. The president and vice president came out and said that they did not want that to be part of a normal budget. They did not want that to go through like the normal chain, because this money had to hit the streets quickly. And that's why the governor has reached out. We have representation from the House and the Senate on Accelerated SC. So they feel like they're part of the conversation, and that nobody is left out in the cold.
That's great. I know in my district, the 5th district, on the northern section, we border Charlotte. And we've got thousands that go to work every day from my district as well as other districts into North Carolina. Any dialogue with the officials there that you're having?
So I talked to Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest a lot. He's a great guy. Hopefully will be the next governor of the state of North Carolina. The governor has been talking with governors, not just Republican governors, but our Democratic governors too, from around the country, collaborating. That's kind of the most I think that he's been doing with North Carolina, although our governor has an open door policy all the time, because he wants to make sure that he knows what's happening in our surrounding states.
That's great. Now, how's our PPE supplies doing? I guess what role should each state play in managing and making sure the supplies are there for those that need it.
So Accelerate SC has been, again, I keep going back to that, but I really think it is kind of the glue and the one-stop shop for everybody that wants to know about what to do during this COVID-19 time that we have, right? So there is for our small businesses, because we know that if you're a large business, getting PPE isn't as hard as if you're a more of a mom and pop shop that are ordering in small quantities. So what we've done is we've compiled on the website, a group of suppliers that our small businesses can go to get PPE. We are looking to see what resources we have here in South Carolina. Senator Graham had said he would love South Carolina to be the manufacturing powerhouse for PPE. Milliken has changed their production to supply PPE and start producing PPE. So, you know, like you said, we are both business people. This is great opportunity for entrepreneurs to see what's lacking here in the US, how it affects our country, and, you know, maybe a whole new business line in their future.
You know, one good thing about what's hit this country, one silver lining is we cannot be dependent on China or really any other country. You know, the plastic gloves that doctors wear, Malaysia produces 90% of those. And just like we've got to incentivize companies here in this country to make them and get self-sufficient with them.
Absolutely.
Pamela, what about the contracts? I know some states are contracting with other countries for supplies. Has South Carolina done any of that or needed to?
So we look to make strategic partners all the time with everything we do here in South Carolina. But I think what we're trying to do is focus on our South Carolina companies. A lot of them, congressmen, have come to the table and switched their production efforts to make sure that they're standing ready for the call for the need of PPE. And so we're looking to see how we help those South Carolina companies. But we are always looking to see what relationships we could build outside of South Carolina if the need arises. But always our first and foremost is to look at what we're doing here with our own businesses in South Carolina.
Well, that's what, as you go, as I go around the district, the companies and the people leading those companies, as well as employees, they're innovative, they're hard workers. It's encouraging really to see them.
It really is.
Everybody, all of us have gotten in the mail the census tracts. I think our listeners need to really realize they base a lot of the federal funds on what the census says, school supplies, you know, broadband, everything is affected by the census. How are we ensuring that it's safe, that people are getting the census back in on a timely manner and accurately? What kind of safeguards do we have?
Oh, this is near and dear to my heart. You know, the governor share the complete count census here in South Carolina. And so obviously we had this big kickoff planned and then COVID-19 happened. We reached out to partners all over the state. The safest way to do it is, and it's unprecedented, it's the first time in the history of the census you can do it this way, is to go on to www.2020census.gov, and you can do it right online. And what people don't understand, Congressman, is how important it is for South Carolinians to do this. I think we get complacent because the census has been going on so long that we think, well, it's not that big of a deal, but it is. In 2010, South Carolina was upwards of 20% undercounted. So the dollars that we received from the federal government, that 1.96, roughly $2 billion we got for this pandemic, was based on those census numbers that we know were low. People want more money dedicated to infrastructure, to schools, to our elders and programs that they need. All of that funding from the federal government is coming from the census. So we are doing all kinds of creative ways to get to people. And I would love for you to reach out to your district and get everybody energized. The last that I looked on the census was about a week ago. We were 40th on self-call-in, which is terrible. even our areas that were doing well, we're only reporting in at like 54%. So I know this pandemic has got everybody focused on that, but we really have to focus on the census because it will affect us for the next 10 years. People that say to me, Lieutenant Governor, I'm just worried about giving the federal government or anybody any information about me. I want to assure them that the information that they give in this 2020 census or any census is locked up and locked away from even a FOIA document for 72 years. So I don't know, Ralph, but that seems pretty safe to me. And go online. I've been asking, like yesterday, we talked a little bit about the census at Accelerate SC, and I was asking for our colleges, you know, grandparents. My mother's 91, she lives with me. She doesn't listen to me, but she listens to my kids and she listens to her other grandkids. And I know you have grandkids because you're smiling and you'll probably listen to them over your kids. To really reach out to our colleges and our youth to help them help their grandparents do that. Because a lot of them aren't going to go to post office and mail that like they normally did. And so sit down with them, help them. You can do it from any iPad, phone, or computer that you have in your household.
That's a very good point. Say that website again that you can go directly.
It's www.2020census.gov. Very easy. I did it for my household in less than 5 minutes.
That's very important. You know, you realize all of the House members, Senate members, state Senate, state House, based on population as a Congress, as all the congressional offices. South Carolina has people moving into the state.
Yes.
And so that's why it's important for us to give an accurate account. Well, thank you for that. And I appreciate what you're doing with that. Now, let's go testing. I'm hearing a lot of companies that, for liability reasons, want to test employees as they come in, as well as just knowing, you know, who could possibly be affected with it. State, any action with that?
So we are. So we are working with our research colleges, our medical research colleges, DHEC. There's private partners through the state. You know, South Carolina has been blessed. We've been blessed in so many ways, but in this, we weren't hit as hard as other states. So resources weren't coming to us in the abundance initially that maybe other states were getting it that had higher numbers. So that's why you see some of the low numbers for testing was just based on the fact we didn't need it. And the initial guidelines were to only test people that were showing symptoms or had been in a vulnerable area where they had been exposed. So I've been talking to a lot of manufacturers myself. And what we have to remember, and Dr. Bell has said this over and over again, when you're testing people for today. So, you know, we all know that having kids. I'm an accountant by trade, right? Not a doctor. So, but I know as a mom, you know, you take your child to the doctor because you think they have an ear infection and the doctor looks in there and says, no, they don't. But in 24 hours, you can go back and then they can test positive for an ear infection, right? So testing everybody every single day would be the only way to do that. And that would be cost prohibitive for any, you know, large, especially manufacturer. So I think there's some guidelines, you know, wearing masks, keeping social distancing, doing an easy temperature test when people come in to make sure that they don't have a fever or have a fever coming on, you know, their temperature starting to creep up. There are a lot of ways to be able to do this. Then come up with good guidelines that if they do have somebody that tests positive, then do some more formal testing.
And it's called common sense, a lot of it. I know at Boeing yesterday,
Yes.
we social distances. Our chairs were 6-8 feet apart. And I think that's the new normal for meetings all over the country. And it's common sense. People want to wash your hands, do the easy things. And like you said, with the test your temperature, that's the first gauge from every physician I've talked to. If you got a temperature, something's going on. And like you say, it could change.
And I think one thing too is that Senator Graham talked about, he came to an Accelerated SC meeting and he said that he felt from what he was hearing that there would be a treatment protocol by midsummer. And then that becomes a game changer for everybody. You know, the reason this seemed to be such a problem was that there's no course of treatment. We don't really know how to treat it. We're doing everything we can, kind of throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it. but he felt, in his words, that would take this from a 10 to a 1 or 2. So I'm keeping in my prayers every day that that treatment protocol comes into effect here in the summer.
And the confidence it'll give people will
Oh,
be
yeah.
tremendous if they have that. Now, accelerate.southsc.gov, the website. What can people find on it? How's it going, in your opinion?
I think it's going well. The governor had very simple guidelines. Make this simple, make it a one-stop place, make sure everybody could understand what they were reading. And so on there, you'll find what you can do as a business as far as guidelines, all the governor's executive orders, what you need to do to reopen in our close contact industries. You can find out information about unemployment. You can, if you're a manufacturer, look at how you can acquire PPE, like we talked about earlier, especially if you're not a big manufacturer and you're looking for those small quantities. It's getting a lot of push. It actually got unveiled last week. Commerce kind of had a small website that I worked on with them in the interim while we were getting this done. But anybody that has any questions, accelerate.sc.gov is the place to go. You'll really find everything you need there.
You know, in a time like this too, Pamela, you can't have too much information. People
Exactly.
can gloss over it, but having it there, and that's a great website, accelerate.sc.gov. Is it true that South Carolina on the supplies, only half of it has been expended? Do we have enough stockpile, or will we be stockpiling more?
Well, we always wish we had more, right? But we do have adequate supplies coming in. We're getting more and more. Boeing, like you said, has been a great asset to South Carolina. They brought in a Dream Lifter to Greenville a few weeks ago, and then yesterday into Charleston. So we continue to be very aggressive at getting enough PPE, and that's something that's being talked about at Accelerate SC. Does now South Carolina need to look at our stockpiles and not solely rely on the federal stockpile? So that's something that the resource group is looking at. The protection group. So we took Accelerate SC and we divided into different subgroups. We have governance and protection and resources. So that's what they're looking at, is giving the governor some guidelines about how to use some of that money and maybe come up with a different kind of stockpile here in South Carolina.
Yeah. Walk me through your thought process. What do you think we've learned from this? This hit everybody by surprise. Who would have thought that we would be where we are now? What's your take on what we've learned from it?
Well, I think we've learned a lot. One of the guidelines under our governance subcommittee was for us as a state and for our legislators to hear what made it hard for us to help our localities, right? Where were we not nimble? What red tape was so thick we couldn't do the right thing for them or with them? So that's something we've learned. We've brought our localities into this conversation to say, how are we better and stronger should anything like this happen again? What red tape do we need to clear? Because the governor has been part of that since he became governor. Let's get rid of useless regulations that are harming us and not helping us. And so this just brought light to that. I think we'll be stronger in that way. Like you said, looking at what resources do we need here? And then looking at how quickly, again, we can move around in the government to get things done to help keep our citizens safe. So we're taking all these lessons. That's all part of Accelerate SC to make us stronger moving forward. So I think we've learned a lot of things. I think we're going to be stronger once we come out of this.
Yeah, and you know, as business people, regulations are being shown now. Look at how we've accelerated the things that we're doing to help get us through this pandemic. And, you know, businesses are held back. Some regulations are needed. A lot of them are not. And that's where our role is to find out. And for our listeners, we need to know what's hindering you. Let us know what regulation in your particular business, your line of work, would help you out.
Congressman, you're absolutely right. I'd just like to add, the governor has said it, and I try to say it everywhere I speak at, don't assume we know where your heartburn is, because we can't know everything. Just like you, tell us where you have a problem and let us help you fix it.
Yeah, and as politicians, we don't know what we don't know. But you're right. Everybody thinks we've got our pulse on every single issue, and we're drinking, particularly now, not from a fire hydrant, but from an ocean of things that are coming at us. So that's exactly right. This is May 12th. What do you see for South Carolina 3, 6, 12 months from now?
So I want to see us stronger than we are today. I want to see businesses reinventing themselves where they need to. I want to see entrepreneurs feeling excited about where we've seen gaps in our supply chains and what new opportunities that will bring to Americans and right here to America. In South Carolina, we'll keep moving forward. We had to put a slowdown on our economy, which, like you said, we would have never dreamed of just a year ago, that we would self-inflict some of this. But we are committed to getting these businesses reopened as safely as we can. That's why these guidelines are so important, because it's not just about opening up a business. Secretary Hitt said that. It's also making sure that we are laying the foundation for our customers and our employees to be confident to return to those businesses. Because opening up your doors doesn't help if nobody walks through them. We know that as business people. So these guidelines are really important. We will keep opening up business, and we'll be here to stand shoulder to shoulder with them to get them moving again, so we can be exactly where we were and better before this happened.
And it's like you and the governor have always said, we're open for business. We want quality business here in South Carolina.
That's right.
As we wrap up here, have you got any stories, that you'd like to share with us on constituents that you have met that are inspiring or that kind of stick out as you look back?
There are so many great stories. I've been in office now about 1.5 years, and I am amazed every day. I've had the pleasure of being a lieutenant governor that doesn't have to sit in the Senate, although those are great people in the Senate, but I get to work hand in hand with our governor, just kind of like the president and vice president do. So I get to travel around and meet people and see business firsthand, go to colleges and universities and see what's going on. I'm inspired every day, Congressman, about the great businesses we have here. I'm going to share a story that I tell other people. I was at the Life Science Conference in Philadelphia and had no idea that we have this great company called Charles River here in South Carolina. And it was so interesting what they do. They take the blood of the horseshoe crab, and that blood is used in a technology that gets sent all over the world to test pharmaceuticals. So if you have a pharmaceutical that you're producing, you need to come to them to get this agent, and every lot of pharmaceuticals that come out get tested through this. If it coagulates, there's been something that has tampered it and it gets thrown away. It helps the safety of everybody across the globe. And it happens right here in South Carolina with the horseshoe crabs that we have right here in South Carolina. And I asked them this question. I said, when we were debating a lot about offshore drilling, I said, what would happen if offshore drilling came to our shores and we would have a spill? And they said, it would be devastating to the pharmaceutical world as we know it. Because if we altered the horseshoe crab at all, we don't know what would happen. And it just made me pause. Like, just imagine how something so important is done right here in South Carolina, and it impacts the entire world.
Yeah, and it's like that all over South Carolina. People, during a crisis, they come together, and as the governor said yesterday, we're a family. Yes. And we stick together, and we go to work. Thank you for the job that you're doing. Appreciate all that you're adding to this great state, and our office is here to help you in any way.
Well, Congressman, I'm going to ask you to get our census message out. I think that's really important. And I just want to say thank you to everyone that's watching. I mean, you and I could probably tell story after story about how individuals and small businesses and big businesses have all come together to make South Carolina this amazing state that we live in. There's just so many stories of the wonderful things people are doing, the selfless things that they're doing all of these people across the state who are making masks, who have probably loved to sew and have now been able to come to the rescue. And I had a group make my entire family's beautiful South Carolina masks. I think I might have one here. So, so when we need to go out and use a mask, we have one available, but there are great groups across the state doing amazing things for people.
And they're asking, how can I help? People that you
Exactly.
never would think. They say, how can I help? And it's, and everybody's been impacted. But I like to quote Winston Churchill when he said, you know, there'll be a time when doing your best isn't good enough. You got to do what's required. People in South Carolina are doing what's required. And it really is uplifting to see it.
It really is, Congressman. Thank you for all you're representing us so well in Washington, and your job really isn't easy. So thank you for all you're doing, and keep charging forward. Don't give up there.
It's a team effort, and we're going to fight.
That's right.
Have a great week, Pamela. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman.
See you.